I hadn't been back to Brayhill in years. The town wasn't much, a forgotten dot in the middle of nowhere, where you know everyone and everyone knows you. As soon as you hit 18, you leave for college, never looking back. Except, I had to come back. It was my uncle's funeral. Driving through those back roads, I got hit with this heavy feeling, like the air was thick with something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't just nostalgia. There was something else. Something off. I didn't think much of it at the time. Brayhill was always weird. When I finally rolled into town, everything looked the same, yet different. Maybe it was the lack of people? The streets were dead empty. No kids playing outside, no cars except for the occasional beat-up truck driving by. Even the old diner where I spent my weekends was shut down. My uncle's place was at the far edge of town, surrounded by woods. You couldn't miss it. It was one of those old farmhouses that had seen better days. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw it, the window on the second floor, that damn window that I used to avoid looking at as a kid. I don't know why, but it always creeped me out. The glass was cracked, and behind it, just darkness. I figured I'd have a quick look around before heading to the service. When I opened the front door, that musty smell hit me hard, like the place hadn't been touched in years. But I knew that wasn't right. My uncle had been living here up until the day he died. As I walked in, I noticed how cold it was, colder than it should have been in August. The floorboards creaked under every step, almost like the house was breathing. It wasn't long before I found myself standing at the base of the staircase. My eyes drifted up to that window on the second floor, even though I didn't want to look. And that's when I saw it, a figure faint, barely visible but there. Someone was standing just out of sight, watching me. I froze. Every instinct told me to run, but I stayed glued to the spot. My heart raced, and the air seemed to thicken around me. Then, the figure moved, slowly stepping back into the darkness of the room. The temperature dropped even further. It was like whatever was up there wanted me to follow it. Now I've seen my fair share of horror movies, and I knew how this ended. But this was different. This wasn't a movie. This was real. And something about the whole situation, it felt personal. Like I needed to go up there. So, against all better judgment, I started climbing the stairs, each step heavier than the last. The air grew colder, and that creeping sense of dread turned into full-blown terror. But I couldn't stop. When I reached the top, the hallway stretched out before me, darker than it should have been. The door to the room with the window was wide open. The figure was gone. But then I heard it. Scratching. It was coming from inside the room. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the door frame, and then I took a deep breath and stepped in. The room was empty, except for an old wooden dresser against the far wall. The window was cracked, letting in just enough light to cast long, eerie shadows across the floor. That's when I saw it, the source of the scratching. On the dresser was an old black and white photo of my uncle, and me as a kid, standing in front of the house. But the thing that stopped me cold was the third figure in the photo. A woman. Her face was blurry, distorted, as if she was moving when the picture was taken. But her eyes, they were locked on me. I staggered back, my mind racing. Who the hell was that? I'd never seen her before. Then the scratching started again, from under the bed. I turned slowly, my heart pounding so hard I thought it had burst out of my chest. Whatever was under there, it was moving, scraping against the wood. My feet felt like lead, but I had to know. I crouched down, peering into the darkness beneath the bed. For a second, I saw nothing. And then, a hand. Thin, pale, claw-like fingers reaching out toward me. I jumped back, nearly tripping over myself. But before I could react, the hand withdrew, and a voice, faint and whispery, echoed through the room. "She's waiting for you." I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted out of the room, down the stairs, and out the door faster than I've ever moved in my life. But as I ran, I heard footsteps behind me, heavy ones, thudding against the floor in a way that made it clear this wasn't just my imagination. By the time I reached my car, the footsteps had stopped. I fumbled with my keys, heart pounding in my ears, but when I glanced back at the house, the front door was open. And standing in the doorway, was the figure. The woman from the photo. I couldn't make out her face, but I knew it was her. She just stood there watching me, like she was waiting for something. I peeled out of there and didn't stop driving until I hit the main road. I never went back to Brayhill. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear that scratching sound, and I know deep down that she's still waiting for me. Hope that tickled your nerves just the right way. Keep the lights on tonight. It's been 3 weeks since I left Brayhill, and I can't shake the feeling that something followed me back. It sounds insane, I know, but every night since I got home, weird things have been happening. Subtle at first, things moved around in my apartment, doors creaking when I know I closed them, but nothing I couldn't chalk up to nerves. You know, after an experience like that, your mind plays tricks on you. But then it started getting worse. A few nights ago, I was lying in bed half asleep, when I heard a knock. Not on my door, but on the wall, inside my room. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, like someone tapping their knuckles against the drywall. I sat up, my heart instantly racing. My apartment isn't big. It's just me living alone, so there's no reason for anyone to be inside. I turned on the light, looked around. Nothing. The room was exactly as I'd left it. I tried to brush it off. Maybe the building was settling, or something. Maybe it was the pipes. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The knocking didn't sound like pipes. It sounded human. The next day, I was exhausted. I hadn't gotten any sleep, and my mind was racing with all sorts of crazy thoughts. I went to work, tried to focus, but I couldn't shake this growing sense of dread. I started thinking about the woman I saw in the house, about the figure in the photo, and the things I heard, especially that last whisper, "She's waiting for you." Who the hell was she? And why did she seem so familiar? By the time I got home, I was on edge. I locked every door and window, checked them twice, and then poured myself a drink. I needed to calm down. But when I sat on the couch, I felt it again, that cold, creeping sensation, like someone was standing right behind me. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see her standing there. But no. Nothing. Just my empty living room. Then, as I turned back, I noticed something on the coffee table. A picture. One I hadn't put there. It was the same black and white photo I'd found in my uncle's house. The one with me, my uncle, and her. My hands started to shake. I hadn't taken that photo with me. Hell, I didn't even touch it after I saw it the first time. How the hell did it get here? I stared at it for what felt like hours, my mind going in circles, trying to come up with some rational explanation. But there wasn't one. The photo was here in my apartment, and that meant she was here too. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the corner of my bedroom, lights on, eyes glued to the door, waiting. Listening. And that's when I heard it again. Knock. 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 This time, it was louder. Closer. Like someone was right outside my bedroom door. I jumped up, my heart in my throat, and grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a baseball, but I kept under the bed. I swung the door open, expecting to see someone standing there, but once again, there was no one. But I wasn't alone. The air was different. Heavy. It felt like something was watching me. I stepped out into the hallway, bat raised, scanning every inch of the space. And that's when I saw it. At the end of the hallway, just barely visible in the shadows, was a figure. A woman with long dark hair hanging over her face, just like the one in the photo. She stood there, perfectly still, watching me from the darkness. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My body was frozen in place as I stared at her, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then, she took a step forward. My legs finally kicked into gear. I ran. I didn't even think about where I was going, I just needed to get out. I flew down the stairs, nearly tripping over myself, and slammed through the front door, not even bothering to close it behind me. I didn't stop running until I was several blocks away, standing under the harsh light of a street lamp. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I looked around trying to calm myself, but the street was deserted. And then I saw it. Across the road, standing just at the edge of the light, was her. The woman from Brayhill. She didn't move. Didn't even flinch. She just stood there watching me, like she was waiting for something. For me. I backed away slowly, not taking my eyes off her. But no matter how far I went, she stayed right there, always just out of reach, always watching. I turned the corner, ran as fast as I could, and didn't look back. That was 2 nights ago. Since then, I've been staying with a friend, crashing on his couch, but I know she's still out there. I can feel her presence, even when I'm not looking. When I close my eyes, I see her face, twisted and blurry, her eyes burning into me. I don't know how long I can keep running. I don't even know what she wants. But one thing's for sure. She's not going to stop. And somehow, I have this horrible feeling that she's getting closer. I've barely slept since that night. I thought getting away from my apartment, from Brayhill, would help. But she's still there. Always there. No matter where I go, I feel her eyes on me. The worst part? I'm starting to see her everywhere. Out of the corner of my eye, in the reflection of mirrors, in shop windows as I pass by. She's always watching. But when I turn, she's gone. Like she's toying with me, making sure I never feel safe again. I tried to tell my friend about it. He thinks I'm losing it. Hell, maybe I am. But then, last night, something happened that I can't explain. We were sitting in the living room, just watching TV, trying to relax. I hadn't mentioned her in days. I thought maybe if I ignored it, she'd go away. But that's when things got really strange. The lights flickered. At first, just a quick dimming, like a power surge. My friend didn't even notice. But then the flickering got worse, like someone was playing with the light switch. On, off, so fast it was disorienting. My friend stood up, annoyed, and went to check the breaker. Must be some kind of short, he said, disappearing down the hall. I stayed on the couch, heart racing, trying to tell myself it was just bad wiring. And then I saw it. The TV screen. It wasn't showing the movie we'd been watching anymore. The image was grainy, flickering, like old static from a VCR. I leaned in closer, squinting to make sense of the distorted image, and that's when I saw her. The woman. She was standing in the middle of the screen, her long hair hanging down, her face hidden, just like before. She didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there, staring directly at the camera, at me. My body locked up. I wanted to scream for my friend, but the words caught in my throat. I tried to change the channel, turn the TV off, anything, but the remote was dead in my hands. She stayed there, still, like she was waiting for something. And then, slowly, she started to move. Her head tilted to one side, almost unnaturally, like her neck was bending at an impossible angle. I could hear this faint cracking sound, like bone snapping. Her face began to shift, turning toward me. And that's when I saw it, those eyes. Hollow, black pits, void of anything human. They bore into me, pulling me in. Suddenly, the lights cut out entirely, plunging the room into complete darkness. I was alone. I called out to my friend, my voice shaking, but there was no answer. Just silence, thick and suffocating. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath coming in short gasps. I reached for my phone, but the battery was dead. The only light in the room now was from the TV, still flickering with static. Then, I heard the footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from the hallway. My friend? It had to be him, right? But the footsteps, they didn't sound right. Too heavy. Too slow. Like someone was dragging themselves across the floor. I forced myself to stand, the bat still in my hand, and moved toward the hallway, calling out again. No response. I could hear the steps getting closer, shuffling along the wooden floor. I held my breath, waiting, praying it was just my friend messing with me, or maybe my mind playing tricks again. But deep down, I knew. I knew it wasn't him. I turned the corner, bat raised, ready for whatever was coming. And that's when I saw her. She was standing in the hallway, right by the breaker box, her head hanging low, hair covering her face. I froze, my entire body paralyzed with fear. She wasn't supposed to be real. She wasn't supposed to be here. I stepped back, my legs shaking so badly I almost collapsed. But she didn't move. She just stood there, blocking my only way out. My heart pounded in my ears, and for a moment, I thought I might faint. Then she raised her head. Her face, God, it was worse than anything I'd imagined. Pale and twisted, her mouth stretched unnaturally wide, like a grotesque grin. Her eyes, dark and empty, locked onto mine, and I swear I felt the temperature drop another 10 degrees. My breath came out in short, white puffs, like I was standing outside in the dead of winter. And then she spoke. Her voice wasn't right. It wasn't even human. It was this low, guttural sound, like something was scraping out from deep within her throat. But I understood the words. You can't run. The lights flickered again, blinding me for a split second, and when they came back on, she was gone. Just vanished. The hallway was empty. My friend came running out, asking what the hell was going on. But I couldn't even speak. I just stared at the spot where she'd been, the words echoing in my mind. You can't run. I left his place that night, packed a bag, and checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. I figured maybe if I kept moving, she wouldn't be able to follow me. But I was wrong. She's always there, just out of sight, waiting. I don't know what she wants, or why she's after me. But I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Every night, I hear her voice, those same words, over and over again, drilling into my mind. You can't run. And the truth is, she's right. I wish I could tell you the motel was safe. I really do. But she found me there, too. I barely made it 2 nights before the same thing started happening again. The knocking on the walls, the lights flickering, that creeping cold that seemed to follow me everywhere I went. I kept telling myself it was just my mind playing tricks, that if I just stayed calm, maybe it would stop. But it didn't. It got worse. The second night, I woke up to the sound of the TV turning on by itself. Static filled the screen, that eerie, endless white noise humming in the room. At first, I didn't think much of it. Just bad wiring, right? Motels are notorious for that kind of thing. I grabbed the remote, tried turning it off, but nothing happened. The screen stayed on, flickering. And then I saw her again. This time, she wasn't just a shadow. She was there on the screen, standing in the corner of the motel room, as if the TV was a window looking into my space. My heart nearly stopped when I realized that what I was seeing wasn't just some weird glitch in the footage. It was real time. She was in the room with me. I whipped around, expecting to see her standing in the corner, but there was nothing. Just the empty room, the cold, and the oppressive silence. But on the TV, she was still there watching me, her face hidden by that curtain of long dark hair. Then, slowly, she started walking toward the camera, toward me. I threw the remote across the room and scrambled out of bed, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen. The closer she got, the more distorted the image became, until the TV started to buzz with static, like the signal was about to cut out. But before it did, I saw her hand reach out, pressing against the glass of the screen, and I swear to God, I saw the glass bend. The lights in the room flickered again, and then the TV cut to black. For a second, everything was dead quiet. No hum from the TV, no creaks from the motel's old walls, just complete and utter silence. But I could feel it. I could feel her. The air was thick with her presence, like the room wasn't empty anymore. And then I heard it. That same low, guttural voice, crawling out of the dark, whispering right into my ear. "You can't hide." I spun around, bat clenched in my hands, swinging at nothing. There was no one there. But the room had changed. I could feel her everywhere, closing in on me from all sides. The walls seemed to shift, like the space was warping around me, pressing in, suffocating. I stumbled toward the door, heart pounding, but the handle wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The knocking started again, louder this time. Boom. Boom. Boom, like someone pounding on the walls from every direction. My mind was racing, my breath shallow and fast, and for a split second, I thought about just giving up. Letting her take me. Because what was the point? There was no running. No hiding. But then, something clicked. I don't know what it was, maybe sheer survival instinct, maybe just desperation, but I snapped. I grabbed the bat, and instead of running, I turned toward the TV. I didn't know what I was going to do. Maybe I thought if I broke it, I could break her hold over me. Maybe I was just losing it. I swung the bat as hard as I could, smashing the screen. Glass shattered, sparks flew, and for a moment, everything went dark again. And then, she screamed. It wasn't just any scream, it was this awful, piercing wail, like 1,000 voices crying out at once, echoing through the room, shaking the walls. The lights flickered violently, and I felt this overwhelming surge of cold air, like a winter storm had exploded inside the room. The walls groaned, the floorboards creaked, and I knew she was there right behind me. I didn't wait to find out what happened next. With every ounce of strength I had left, I threw myself at the door, wrenching it open. The second I was out in the hallway, the door slammed shut behind me with a force that nearly knocked me over. The air outside felt lighter, like I had just escaped something massive and unseen. I didn't stop to pack my things. I just ran. I don't even remember getting to my car. All I know is, one minute I was sprinting down the hallway, and the next, I was driving as fast as I could, the motel shrinking in my rearview mirror. But the whole time I could feel her, like she was riding with me, sitting in the back seat, just waiting for the next moment to strike. Now, I'm sitting in a rest stop 100 miles from that motel, and I know it's only a matter of time before she finds me again. I've thought about going to the cops, but what am I supposed to say? That some ghost or thing is following me. They'd lock me up before I could finish the story. But it's more than that. I think, deep down, I know there's no escaping her. Not really. It's like she's connected to me now, wherever I go. I can feel it in my bones. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face, that twisted smile, those hollow black eyes. She's coming. I don't know when, but she's coming. And when she does, I'm not sure I'll be able to fight her off again. If you're reading this, and you ever feel like someone's watching you, even when you're alone, trust that feeling. Because once she finds you, there's no going back. She doesn't stop. She doesn't rest. And you can't run. It's been days since I left that rest stop. Days since I've had any real sleep. And I know I don't have much time left. The strange thing is, after all this running, all the fear, I'm starting to understand something. She doesn't want to kill me. No, it's something worse. She wants me to suffer. She wants me to be afraid, constantly, endlessly afraid. And she's succeeding. Every minute I'm awake, I'm consumed by the thought of her. And when I finally do manage to close my eyes, she's there, waiting in my dreams. There's no escape, not even in sleep. Last night was the breaking point. I'd found another motel, this time in the middle of nowhere, deep in the woods. I figured if I could put as much distance as possible between myself and any kind of town or city, maybe I could buy some time. It didn't work. I had barely drifted off when the knocking started again. Boom. 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 Slow, methodical, like a clock counting down to something inevitable. But this time, it wasn't just the walls. It was inside my head. I shot up in bed, drenched in sweat, and I realized I wasn't alone. The room was dark, the air freezing, and I could see my breath in front of me. But what scared me more than the cold was the silence. The kind of silence that presses down on you, suffocating every sound, every thought. It was like the world had gone dead.
Then I heard it, her voice.
You can't run from me.
It came from everywhere.
The walls, the floor, the air around me. It was like she was part of the very fabric of the room. I clutched the bat, my fingers trembling, but I knew it wouldn't help.
Not this time.
I turned toward the mirror across the room.
I don't know why.
Maybe I was drawn to it. Maybe I knew deep down what I'd see.
And there she was.
Standing behind me. Her reflection stared at me through the glass, her long hair falling in front of her face, but this time, she moved. Slowly, methodically, she lifted her head, revealing that horrible, twisted grin. Her eyes, hollow and dark, bore into mine, and I could feel her, deep inside my mind, pulling at me.
I couldn't look away.
It was like she was holding me there, freezing me in place. My heart raced, but my body wouldn't move.
I couldn't scream. I couldn't run. I was trapped. Then, she stepped forward.
Out of the mirror. Her hand, cold, bone-thin fingers, reached for my shoulder. I felt her touch before I even saw her move, a chilling weight pressing down on me. I tried to fight it, to resist, but the second her hand touched my skin, everything went numb.
I couldn't feel my body.
My vision blurred, my hearing dulled, and all I could hear was her voice, echoing in my head, over and over.
You can't run. You can't hide. She was right. I was done running.
I had nowhere left to go. As her fingers dug into my shoulder, I felt something shift. Like my mind was unraveling, piece by piece, the fear eating away at me from the inside. She wasn't going to kill me. She was going to take something far worse, my sanity. I don't remember what happened next. Maybe I blacked out. Maybe I just couldn't handle the weight of her presence anymore. All I know is, when I woke up, the room was empty. The mirror was shattered, pieces of glass littering the floor, reflecting the dull, gray light of dawn seeping through the curtains. But I wasn't alone. I could still feel her, inside me now. Not behind me, not in the shadows, but inside my mind, like she had burrowed deep into my thoughts, embedding herself in every corner of my brain. I could hear her voice, whispering faintly, even now. And that's when I realized the truth. She's not just haunting me. She's becoming me. I'm no longer the person I was before all this started. Something's changing inside me, twisting my thoughts, warping my mind. It's like she's taking over, bit by bit, turning me into her. I don't know how long I have before I lose control completely. But I know it's happening. I can feel it every second, the fear crawling under my skin, taking hold of me. Soon, there won't be anything left of me.
Just her. And when that happens, she'll move on. She'll find someone else.
Someone like you. So if you're reading this, if you felt that cold chill, that creeping sensation that something is watching you, don't ignore it. Don't tell yourself it's just your imagination. Because once she sets her sights on you, there's no stopping her. She'll haunt you, just like she haunted me. She'll creep into your thoughts, your dreams, and before you know it, you won't be able to tell where you end and she begins. And you'll never be alone again. I guess this is it for me. I'm leaving this message as a warning, though I don't know if it'll help. But if it saves someone, even for a little while, then maybe it's worth it. Just, don't look in the mirror tonight. Because if you do, you might just see her staring back.
That's the end. You've been warned. Sleep tight. While you still can.